Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of SuperSoul Boulder. I'm Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy here in Boulder, Colorado. And here on SuperSoul Boulder, we talk about and discuss all topics related to mind, body, heart, health, and wellness. And why do I say mind, body, heart? Because while I studied the body for such a long time, and a lot of you out there probably have worked with your body, if you like exercise, if you're getting to like exercise, any of those things, you know our bodies pretty well, but we may miss the connection of your body to your mind and its patterns and its emotions and its responses, or the heart. You know, we may forget what we're passionate about, what we love, what inspires us, what motivates us. So we want to integrate all of those together. Tonight's topic is, and this is tonight's topic I'm really excited about. So it is lonely versus alone. So loneliness versus aloneness. And I feel that many people confuse the two. It's easy to confuse the two. It's easy to think of the word alone and shoot straight to lonely. Or think of the word alone and take it to be a bad thing. I think most people, you guys let me know if you agree with that. Most people might think, I don't want to be alone. Or maybe that's just some of us. Maybe some people, or some stages or seasons in our lives, we may feel like, gosh, I just could use some alone time, right? For my parent friends out there, you might be feeling that way. Or during this, recording this during the COVID pandemic, and we've all had this experience of staying at home, being around fewer people. And so, what was that like for you? Did you feel more alone? Were you lonely? Did it seem like you just jumped to one without kind of considering, is it that, or is it something else? Or jump to the concept or idea that it's lonely, or that I'm all alone. Right? So there are lots of ways that we all tend to maybe jump to a label of what that might mean. And so let's take a closer look and investigate the difference between the two. One thing I'll bring up is, especially with the body, when I see patients go through all the time, is we have some injury or struggle with not being able to use our bodies in the same way that we're used to, or maybe you're experienced a pandemic or something like that. Hey Natalie, good to see you. And it can feel very alone. You suddenly can't be with the friends you're used to being around. You can't socialize. You don't have this network of people to relate to, or just to see, or to be with. And if you're used to doing that, if you're used to running with a group or hanging out with your friends or going to a book, a lot of us are, maybe it's more of the social varieties of us that are like that. But even then, some people are more, so, it's to note, some people are more social and some people aren't as social. So it might really depend on your instinctual drives that make this harder or easier for you to feel alone. But if you've ever been used to doing certain things, or even just with your body, maybe it's not related to other people. Hey, Alan, or being around other people, but when your body can't do what you are used to it doing, that can even feel alone. That can even feel like you don't feel yourself. You don't feel the way you're used to feeling. And don't you think that can also feel, maybe it's something off, but maybe you're then really driven to want to be out there with people, even more so because you're not able. And so maybe lonely comes from a place, and check this out, try it on. I'm kind of just stirring up the pot here, but in this moment, I think that lonely has to do with when we want something to be different from how it is. And it may also come from not being so imagine not being in contact with others, not being able to communicate or contact others. But we can also feel lonely when we don't have contact with ourselves. We can also feel like something's missing. I'm lonely, I'm longing for some connection. We usually think of an other, right? We long for connection with someone else. But the same is true if we may not even realize it, if we're lacking a connection with ourselves. If you don't have contact with yourself, it can feel very lonely. Because there's some lack of connection. There's some lack of you might feel separate from yourself. You might not even realize. I think a lot of us go along, we kind of don't know, we're not aware. The more and more you could become aware of yourself, of your situation, of your surroundings, of your inner self, your sensations, emotions, the easier it becomes to discern what that feels like, what that looks like, and maybe that there isn't a connection. So the lack of connection makes it really hard to discern those places in yourself, like alone versus lonely. But I think it can feel very lonely to not have connection with others or to not have connection with yourself. As many of you know, or have, I'm sure experienced, you can be in a crowded room and feel alone. You can be, in bed with a loved one and feel lonely, longing for something, some connection. There's some lack of connection. There's something not tying you together. But the solution is it starts with you. You're being more in contact with yourself, more in tune with yourself, more attuned to yourself and your experience, sensations, emotions, feelings, experience. Hey Carlos, great to see you. Love it when you come on. And I think that lonely happens when we want it to be different. Lonely, we get a feeling, a sense of loneliness when we want it to be different from how it is. I need something to fill this hole of my feeling disconnected. And so we want to reach outward to fill that, when the real solution to that problem, thanks Carlos. It's great to have you here. And hey Dave, great to see you. So the real solution to the feeling of lonely, usually we want to reach out and we want to connect with someone, or we sit in it and go, no one wants to, reach out to me, or something like that. So it starts with being in contact with yourself. And then when you have connection with yourself, you can be alone in your room, in your home. You can be alone and feel rich and full and feel not lacking anything, capable of being with yourself in all the ways that you like to be, And you can be in a crowded room or with a busy home environment, or, and be able to also be alone. So maybe you're craving aloneness because you're like, oh, there's all this scatteredness. To develop a skill of being alone from another way to say this, maybe centered, even though there's a tornado going on around you. So, the eye of the storm is calm. You can be calm amidst a lot of busy noise. Our world is so noisy right now, right? Even though maybe our lives are different or less, maybe less busy, maybe not, maybe different. Hannah, great to see you. So even though there's a storm going, alone and content, I love it, great. Wonderful. That's great. So we can certainly be alone and content. And what I was talking about a bit already is that contentment can come from being in contact with ourselves. So if we're looking or longing for something outside of ourselves, it's harder to be content with where we are. Or say you are experiencing an injury or some setback or some hardship or loss, any of those kinds of hurts, right? They're all a sort of pain. Then lots of times we want to move away from that or ignore it, or there are lots of ways we cope or manage, and different for different people. But if we can be with that, we can be with the experience more and more and more fully, more deeply, then what's needed tends to arise, the contentment or a solution or a next step even. If we go a bit deeper, aloneness can also mean alone. I was talking about noise, so we also have a lot of noise just within our minds, right? So the more aware you become in your personal development, in your maturity, the more, it doesn't matter what age you are, it's more about your awareness developing. The more aware you are, the more the more you'll become aware of all the thoughts, all the frantic thinking that goes on. For many years, I feel like I was too busy to even notice that. I couldn't stop the busyness, right? So slowing down, stopping, made it so apparent how noisy all of that was. All the thoughts, all the fears, all the scatter, going from one thing to the next, all that stuff. Alone can also mean alone from your mental structures, the conceptual structures, ego structures in our minds that tend to keep us away and disconnected from our real selves, because who you are, what you're thinking about, and what you're taking yourself to be may not be who you actually are. And it takes away from, because it distracts us and distorts what our perceptions are, right? Someone can look at us and will think something that may not be true at all, things like that. So aloneness, in a deeper way, another experience of it is to feel alone from that the mental structure, the personality structure, the ego structure. And when that occurs, there's a stillness and a quiet, it's very relieving. If you're like me, and most of us probably been used to a lot of noise. Imagine being alone from the noisy world in your mind. And in this place, for me at least, in an experience, aloneness took on a much more positive connotation than what I was used to as a pretty social person. Certain points in time I might have been more fearful or less interested in being alone, what that might mean, what people might think of me, all those things. So experiencing aloneness was a relief, a settledness, a quiet, a peaceful experience. Maybe a little like Hannah's contentedness, alone and content, fulfilled in just that, non-doing, peaceful, nothing else needed to be added to the moment place. So alone can feel like that. Nothing else is needed. I don't need to have it different. I don't need to be anywhere else. I don't need to have someone else amuse me or entertain me or distract me. I can be alone. Simple. It's very simple. When I experience that, lonely isn't here. Lonely is maybe a distortion, I might say, of aloneness. Lonely is like, it shouldn't be this way. It needs to be different. So it might be a position or attitude we take. But if we settle into what is for you right now, whether your external world is alone or with people, but you can come back to yourself and feel a similar kind of aloneness in a rich and fulfilled way, a similar kind of connection with yourself. Hannah's wonderful point says, loneliness opens me up to the suffering of others. Yeah, that's a good point. Right. Loneliness feels to me a bit like suffering. And to my earlier point, suffering tends to occur when we want to make things different from how they are. Because if we really step back and look at it, what's happening for you now in your life is exactly what's needed for you right now. How do we know that? Because it's happening for you. And that is not to minimize the suffering going on. And that's actually, the true, the people who are dealing with illness and pain and suffering, that is hard to reconcile. So I'm not in any way minimizing that, but because of that, because of our own ability, like Hannah said, to kind of feel or tap into loneliness, we may really, what can happen is that compassion arises for others and for their suffering. And not needing to change, especially if we know we can't change it, but we can connect with that in a way that we may not feel as useful, but it is useful. It is useful. It may lead us to say or do something helpful, or to be with it ourselves. There's just a lot of gain there, even if it's not in the seen or measured in the outer world. So to Hannah's point, opening us up to others, when we have that kind of contact and closeness with ourselves, not avoiding the experience that's going on, but really going into the experience of what you're experiencing right now in any given moment, we have more capacity then to connect with others, even from around the world. I've been doing that this week. It's pretty incredible to be able to connect on a real, very real level with people who are in Australia, or on the other side of the world, or Denmark, or Sweden. It's pretty amazing. Hannah says, I definitely try and avoid being lonely, but yes, it does reveal things about ourselves. Exactly. I think a lot of people may have experienced this over this stay-at-home time, may have been kind of dropped into a place you're not used to, or slowed down a bit, and that can be a struggle for some of us, especially if we're not used to that. But it can be so rich and amazing to have an opportunity to kind of have to stay with yourself, right? To have to be home, to have to come in closer, to have to see what's really going on with our relationships, with our families, with our relationship with ourselves, with our relationship maybe with our body, and the habits we're taking on, with less other distractions or places to go. What a beautiful, beautiful thing, because then you get to see more for yourself. You get to find out more about yourself for those around you. And in knowing more about yourself, not just about yourself, knowing yourself more allows you to understand others more too. It's this amazing thing. And then there's these times I seek for aloneness, Hannah. Yeah, exactly. And then sometimes we're ever changing. We're ever changing. But it's really good to kind of see and discern the differences. And when we may feel a certain way, what does it feel like to want and seek the aloneness? When does that occur? When does it happen? What does it feel like? What does the wanting feel like? And then lonely, what does lonely feel like? Do I really feel lonely? What's underneath that? Where's it coming from? What memories might come up for me? Maybe experiences from earlier in life that make you avoid feeling lonely or something like that. Maybe it feels similar to rejection, and that's harsh. That's hard to experience. Right? But when we do, we get closer again. We get closer to ourselves, to our the truth of your experience. I feel like I'm not talking about the body much today, but it goes along with, right? Same thing. Okay, so same thing with your physical body. The more attuned you can become to your physical sensations, the more you can in real time adjust and more mindfully modify movements if you need to, or realize that you need more movement, or realize that you need more rest, things like that. Or this tweak is going on in my knee, I may need to not push it, continue to push it and push it and push it. Or wow, my back's really hurting. Oh, I've been sitting at my computer a lot. Starting to tie some of those things together. And I guess because if you know me, I like to use the body as a great analogy too. The body, you are alone inside of your body, right? Tisa, hey. Oh my gosh, you could do a talk on this. But you are essentially alone inside of your body. But look at the different, I always like to, reinforce that the different parts of our bodies are not working independently. So maybe so here's where we're going. So you might think of your knee, maybe your knee hurts. Okay, I have knee pain, and so I've got to work on the knee. And I see practitioners do this all too often, but we don't want to miss the, strike that, reverse it. That doesn't matter. But so knee pain, and now there's we don't want to disconnect the knee from all the other things and systems it's connected to, or even a muscle. We could take a muscle, bicep muscle. Oh yeah, my muscle is this muscle. Well, the muscle is attached to bones and it's run by nerves. So and there's a lot of other systems that regulate and control and work together. So we may have an impression or a perception that we're alone, or that we're separate or different, when in actuality we are connected. Just like the knee, just like your bicep muscle, just like your back. So another lens we can put on this topic is we have a perception of ourselves as being alone, and we may disconnect because of our perception. But that brings me back to my points I've been making, is that coming back to yourself, coming back to your experience, coming back to your body and its sensations, allows you to further recognize that you'll experience, or I've experienced that that you'll probably feel less alone in the way that you've normally thought of it. So when I've studied the body, and it became through school, we separated things out quite a lot. We had to memorize all the pieces and parts, and it was after my doctoral education that I was lucky enough to get to put it back together again. And then putting it back together, such a beautiful tapestry of how all the systems of the body work and relate and connect and heal and change and become injured, all these things. So it really is more connected and together than it may seem if you've started to piece it apart. So we may even do that ourselves. We think we're in a room by ourselves, and that means we're alone. But if you connect more deeply with yourself, you may find out something different. And thanks, Alan. And you may find something different. And you may discover how different alone is from loneliness. With that, I leave you with checking out for yourself over the next week what that difference is for you, and what does it feel like, and how well attuned are you to what it feels like in your body, or what it feels like to be alone, or if you feel alone if you're in a room full of family members or things like that. Thank you so much for jumping on and joining me. My name is Dr. Lara Johnson from Yellow Brick Physical Therapy in Boulder, Colorado. Thanks for joining me for episode 60 of SuperSoul Boulder, where we talk about mind, body, heart, health, and wellness. And I wish you a gloriously wonderful week, alone or not. And I invite you to be more in your own aloneness, more in your own experience, and see what it's like. Carlos, thanks. Exactly. Oh, great. I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, we're back to Mondays next week. This week was just an odd week because of my schedule, and I'll see you next Monday and every Monday for another episode. Thanks so much for joining, and have a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye.